I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Simone, my wife of 5 years, was topless, bouncing on the lap of one of the guys in the hot tub below. From the look on her face and the look on the guy's face, it was pretty clear to me what they were doing. What the hell? Angry, I pulled out my phone and took a short video. I thought about changing into my swim trunks, but changed my mind. I sat on a chair in the room and thought back. No wonder she didn't want me to come to this party with her. She had been working as a secretary for S&G Funds, a hedge fund company, for about a year or so, and she really seemed to be happy. Now I know why. Earlier that week, I saw a text come up on her phone, letting her know there would be a company Christmas party this weekend, and she was allowed to bring a +1. When I told her about it, she tried to dissuade me from going. "Oh, Carl, you'll just be bored anyway," was her reply. "I don't get it. Why don't you want me to go with you?" I asked. "Are you ashamed to be seen in public with me or something?" "Of course not, silly. It's just that these are financial gurus. There's probably going to be a lot of boring talk about money and stuff, and you'd just get bored," she replied. Her company had a habit of holding these parties about once a month, and they had always been staff only. Most of the time, Simone was gone until late that night, or even sometimes late the next day. I never made a fuss about it, but now I had a better idea of what actually went on at these things. "I see. Well, maybe I'd like to spend the evening with you anyway," I asked. "Have it your way. If you're going, you'd better get your tux cleaned. But trust me, you're probably not going to have a lot of fun." The day of the party, she suggested I bring a pair of swim trunks. Swim trunks? For a Christmas party? It's December, for crying out loud, and it's cold outside. "Swim trunks? It's awfully cold outside for swim trunks, don't you think?" I asked. "Nah, we usually end up in my boss's penthouse after the main party, and he has a really nice hot tub." "I see. So you do this often then?" I asked. "Yeah, pretty much every time. Now promise me you'll be on your best behavior tonight, okay?" "I always am," I told her. This didn't sound too good. Why would she tell me this? "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Oh, it's just that these parties can get pretty wild sometimes. I don't want you to get upset with anything you might see. The guys there are quite friendly and can get pretty handsy, if you know what I mean." "Well, as long as everything passes the husband test, there shouldn't be any problem, right?" I asked in response. She smiled and said nothing, but gave me a kiss on the cheek. When we got to the main party, Simone introduced me to a friend of hers, Linda. "Linda, this is my husband, Carl," she said. Linda looked me over and smiled. "Husband? This is going to be fun. You really are a wild and crazy girl, you know that?" she asked with a smile. I wondered what she meant by that. Simone smiled as she giggled. "I gotta go mingle, sweetie. Could you get me something to drink? Maybe some wine. Come on, let's go," she told Linda, without giving me so much as a backward glance. I made my way to the bar and got her wine and a beer for myself. I looked around, but I didn't see Simone anywhere. I walked around, looking for her, but to no avail. After a half hour, I sat at an empty table and hoped she would come look for me. In the meantime, I watched as everyone danced and had a general good time. No one said anything to me and walked around me as though I wasn't even there. I guess she was right. I wasn't having any fun at all, and I was getting more than a bit frustrated that my wife would simply abandon me like this. After nursing my beer for a couple of hours, I said, "To hell with this stuff," and got up. I figured if Simone wasn't even going to spend any time with me, I'd just go home and leave her to her friends. I started walking to the entrance when Simone and Linda came up to me. There were 3 other guys with them, and one had his arm around Simone's waist. Simone didn't bother to make any introductions. "Oh, there you are," she said. I could tell she had been drinking. "We were looking all over for you." Yeah, sure you were, I thought. When she kissed me, I could detect the taste of tequila and something else. "Yeah, I was just getting ready to go home since you abandoned me 2 hours ago." "Where were you?" She blushed and looked down as the guys with her smirked at me. I felt like punching them in the teeth. "We were just having a few shots," Linda said. Simone looked at her funny. I wondered what the hell was going on here. "Shots of what?" "I can taste tequila, but there's something else." "Oh, nothing. Hey, listen, we're all going over to Ben's place. He's got the hot tub warming up. Are you ready?" "I guess," I said. "Am I going to get to spend some time with you, or are you planning to abandon me again tonight?" "Oh, don't be silly. You'll see me later. I'll ride over with Linda and the guys if that's okay with you." "Why not ride with me?" I asked. One of the guys grabbed her by the hand and pulled her away. "You can follow me, dude," he said in a tone of voice that pissed me off even more. Simone and Linda followed the guys, and I could hear them laughing as they left. I got my car and followed them. When we arrived, I saw that Simone had already changed into her bikini. What the hell was going on here? When we got there, Simone had already gone into the hot tub with the two guys, who I later learned were Ben and Dale, the two senior partners in the firm. Both of them struck me as little more than rich frat boys. Linda came over to me after they were outside. "So, you think that maybe we can hook up later tonight?" she asked. "What makes you think I'm even inclined to do that?" "I'm married," I replied. "Oh, I thought you guys had an open marriage or something." "What makes you think that?" I asked. "Well, the way Simone carries on with all the other guys. I thought you were into being folded, especially the way she kissed you earlier." "What the hell makes you say that? What do you mean by the way she kissed me earlier?" I asked. "Well, she had already pleasured Ben and Dale. She still had their essence in her mouth when she kissed you. Did you enjoy that?" I felt like throwing up. Her expression changed when she saw my reaction. "Oh my God, you didn't know, did you?" "No. How long has she been doing this?" I asked. "Ever since she came on board the company," Linda said. Oh my God, I thought. That's been over a year now. All this time she's been their cheating woman and I had no clue. "Is that what she was doing at the party? Engaging with those two guys?" I asked. "And a few others. I'm sorry. I just assumed you knew. She really does love you, you know," Linda answered. "Yeah, I'm feeling the love," I said. "Look, why don't you go upstairs and change? Maybe she'll keep herself under control tonight since you're right here." "Yeah, right," I said. I headed upstairs, and that's when I saw her intimate with those two guys. As much as I loved her, there was no way I was going to tolerate this. I decided to confront her about this and went downstairs. "Oh, there you are," Simone said as I got to the bottom of the stairs. "Why aren't you in your bathing suit? Aren't you coming out to the hot tub with us?" I grabbed her arm and pulled her into what looked like a study and closed the door. "What's the matter, Carl?" she asked. "What's the matter? Were you ever going to tell me about having an open marriage?" "What?" she asked. "That's what Linda told me," I said. I pulled out my phone and played the video of her with the two guys in the hot tub. "What's this all about? Thought that maybe you'd just humiliate me even further after abandoning me at the party. And is it true you gave pleasure to those guys off at the party so I could taste their essence in your mouth?" "Oh, come on, Carl. We were just having a little bit of fun." "Yeah, I pleasured them. So what? It doesn't mean that I love you any less." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She admitted to having intimacy with them, and I was just supposed to go along with it. "It means everything," I said. I pulled off my wedding ring and put it in her hand. Then I grabbed her left hand and pulled off her rings. "Carl, what are you doing?" she asked. "You're a disgusting pig, and right now I hate your guts. Merry Christmas. I hope it was worth it to you. Don't bother coming home. I'll be seeing a lawyer about a divorce on Monday." "You can't mean that," she cried. "I love you. I don't want a divorce." "I don't care what you want anymore. I know the truth. I know why you didn't want me to come with you. I won't be your old. Goodbye, Simone." I turned and left. One of the guys, I don't know which, called after me. "Hey, you leaving already?" You know, that's one hot wife you got there. Glad you like her. She's all yours from now on. I left the penthouse, went downstairs to my car, and drove home. Simone began calling and texting me after I left, but I ignored her calls. When I got home, I deleted her messages and blocked her number. I changed out of my tux, grabbed some trash bags, and began tossing her clothes and things into them. I put them into her car and pulled it out of the garage. I removed the garage door opener and changed the code so she couldn't get back inside. By then, it was about 2:30 a.m. and I was dead tired. I fell on the bed and instantly went to sleep. I woke up the next morning to the sound of our house phone ringing. I picked it up without thinking. "Yeah," I said when I answered. "Carl, it's me. Please come get me." "Forget you. You're not my concern anymore," I said. "Carl, please, we have to talk," she begged. "No, we don't. If you have anything to say, you can say it through my lawyer. You do need to come get your car out of my parking space. I've already packed all your stuff in it," I told her before hanging up. She called right back, but I unplugged the house phone. I had no desire to ever see her face or hear her voice again. I fell back on the bed and went to sleep, plugging the phone back in when I got up. That afternoon, after I finally woke up enough to be coherent, I looked and saw that her car was gone. Good. Maybe she finally got the message. I started looking online for a divorce lawyer and read all I could find about the divorce laws in our state. This was a community property state, but we didn't own any real estate, so that wouldn't be an issue. We had no children, so there would be no child support. She made as much, if not a little more than me, so I didn't think there would be any alimony. I also found that while most divorces in this state were no fault, there was a provision to file on the basis of adultery, cruelty, or abuse. That would make the divorce more costly and take more time to resolve, but I didn't care about that. After looking, I noted the number for one Jenny Hawkins, attorney at law, and decided to give her a call on Monday. As I was making my notes, my cell phone rang. I looked but didn't recognize the number. I figured Simone could have been using someone else's phone to call me, but it could have been anyone, so I decided to answer it. "Carl?" asked a female voice. "This is he," I replied. "Carl, this is Linda. I just wanted to let you know Simone is staying with me for a few days. Are you really going for a divorce?" "Yes, I am," I replied. "Carl, she's a wreck. She's in her room crying her eyes out. I'm afraid she's going to have a nervous breakdown." "I don't care. She brought it on herself," I replied. "Don't you have any feelings for her at all?" Linda asked. "Yeah. Right now they can be described as hatred and disgust. She's been messing around with me for a year or more, and she had the audacity to humiliate me in public. We're through." "But she loves you," Linda said. "So she claims. Tell me, what did she do after I left? How long did you two stay at the penthouse? Did she pleasure Ben and Dale again?" "She was upset," Linda said. "We all were." "You're not answering my questions," I said. "Yeah, we all hooked up last night after you left, but only to help Simone feel better. You could have had a good time as well if you'd only stayed." "Where the hell do people like you come from?" I asked, incredulous. "I gotta go, Linda. Goodbye." I ended the call, and that's when I noticed 2 text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. The messages came in early this morning after I had gone to bed. I pulled them up and noticed that videos were attached to them. "Missed one hell of a party, bro," one message read. I played the video and saw Simone getting made airtight by 3 of the men at the penthouse. I recognized Ben and Dale, but didn't recognize the other. Linda stood next to them, naked. The man I didn't recognize looked into the camera and spoke. "That's quite a wife you have there, brah," he said with a grin. "Too bad you weren't here. You could have had a great time." They all laughed as he said that. Even Simone laughed. Yeah, I thought. So much for loving me. The second video was more of the same, except it ended with Ben smearing essence on my wedding ring as Simone held it in her open hand. She looked at the camera with a smirk and licked my ring. My hatred for her only grew exponentially. I transferred the videos to my PC and made a copy of them for the lawyer. I thought about sending the videos to all of her friends and her family, but decided against it, at least for now. The info I got from Jenny's website indicated that I needed to be very careful about how I reacted to her actions. Any negative reaction on my part could easily undo my case, her site warned. Okay, so I decided to hold off for the time being. I didn't hear anything from Simone or Linda the rest of that day or the next, which was a good thing as far as I was concerned. I spent the rest of the weekend exorcising Simone's presence from the apartment. On Monday, I called my boss, explained the situation, and took a few days off for vacation. I knew I would be basically worthless, and my boss understood. He had gone through a divorce from a cheating wife, so he understood how I felt. I called Jenny's office and arranged for an appointment that afternoon. On the way to my appointment, I stopped at the bank and did everything I could to separate her from our joint account. I paid off her joint credit card, then canceled it. I took out half of everything and opened a new account in my name only. Jenny explained the divorce laws in our state and asked if I wanted to pursue an alienation of affection lawsuit against her bosses. She explained that it might not go very far, but there was always a chance, given the evidence I had. I told her to do what she thought best. "Where would like them served?" she asked me. "At their office," I said. I wanted them to experience a bit of the same public humiliation they had heaped on me this past year. She nodded her head and made notes. When we finished, I paid a retainer and then headed home. On the way, I got a call from Linda. "Hello?" I said when I answered. "Carl, would you be willing to meet with Simone and me someplace this afternoon?" she asked. "Not really. I just finished seeing my attorney and she suggested I stay away from her. If she has something to say, she can do it through my lawyer. Would you like her contact information?" "Hold on," she said. I could tell she had placed one hand over the phone, and I could hear her talking to someone, but the voices were muffled. A few moments later, she came back on. "I guess that'll have to do," she said quietly. After I gave her Jenny's contact information, she tried to lobby for Simone one last time. "She really does love you, Carl, and she's willing to make this up to you. Can't you please find it in your heart to forgive her?" Well, she has a damn funny way of showing her love. And how exactly will she make this up to me? Can she turn the clock back a year? I don't think so. The answer is no. I will never forgive her for what she did. Okay, if that's the way you want it. I'll pass that on to her. But you know you're going to have to talk to her sometime. Not if I can help it. What's done is done. Tell her she can expect to be served with papers soon. I ended the call and drove the rest of the way home, stopping only to pick up a 12-pack of beer and a couple of packs of cigarettes. I had stopped smoking when we first got married, but I felt that I needed to do something to keep from punching holes in the walls. Shortly after I got home, the house phone rang. I answered, wondering who was calling now. "Hello," I said. "Mr. Jacobs, this is Ben Carlson, your wife's employer," the young male voice said. I recognized the voice from the party. He seemed to have adopted a more professional tone now that he was back in his place of business. "I know who you are, Ben. What do you want?" "Look, I know you're upset about what happened Friday, and I want you to know that we all thought you were okay with your wife's activities at the company gatherings," he said. "So you knew she was married during all this?" I asked. "Yes, but honestly, she told us you guys had an open marriage and that you were okay with what she was doing." "And you never bothered to ask me about it?" I asked. "I didn't think I had to," he replied. "And the videos you guys sent me Friday night? What was up with that?" I asked. "Those videos were her idea. Look, I'm really very sorry about all this. Is there anything I can do to make it up to you?" "Yeah. You can let me kick your balls into the middle of next week after you testify against her in court. Oh, and I intend to sue you for alienation of affection. If you really want to make it up to me, you'll accept my terms without any argument. Anything else?" "You're really suing us?" he asked. "Yes, especially since you've been violating your own moral clauses for the last year while you've been destroying my marriage. Look, man, this was all just in fun. We didn't intend to destroy your marriage. Well, what the hell did you think was going to happen? Did you honestly think I was just going to sit back and applaud you for being with my wife and using her as a goddamn sperm receptacle? Sounds to me like you've been reading too many stories on the internet. Look, man, we can work through this. A lawsuit like that could ruin us, he pleaded. Not my problem. You shouldn't have turned my wife into your cheating woman. Goodbye. I slammed the phone down and grabbed a beer, then headed to the balcony for a smoke. I didn't hear anything from the cheaters until Wednesday, when they were served at Simone's office. I don't believe you actually did it, Linda said. You didn't even give her a chance to explain. Do you have any idea how humiliated she is right now? I really don't give a damn. She didn't care about humiliating me with her cheating, so I simply don't give a damn. Goodbye, Linda. Don't call here again, I added, slamming the phone down. God, that felt so good. A few moments later, I got another call. I recognized the number as coming from Ben's office. What? I yelled as I answered. You jerk! I'm going to kick your back! How dare you sue me! Simone wanted to pleasure us all, you stupid jerk! Maybe you should have taken care of her better. Bring it, jerk, I replied. How dare you mess up my life? Now I'm going to ruin yours. I slammed the phone down and called Jenny to tell her about Ben's threat. Good, she said. I'll file for a temporary restraining order against Simone as well as her cohorts today. I'll make sure you get a copy of the order. Remember what I said. Don't do anything stupid. What if he comes after me? I asked. Make sure that you have witnesses and don't instigate anything, she said. I understood what she meant. Later that afternoon, there was a knock on the door. True to her word, Jenny had filed the TRO and a courier had just delivered my copy. I decided to hedge my bets somewhat and purchased a small motion-activated camera to cover my front room. I also had a nice Louisville Slugger close to the front door just in case. I figured if Ben or his accomplices intended to make good on their threats, I needed to have something for evidence, and I needed some means of protection. Things remained relatively peaceful for the rest of the week. Thankfully, I didn't hear anything from Linda, Simone, or her boyfriends. Until Saturday night, that is. I was sitting on my balcony nursing a beer and a cigarette when I heard my doorbell. That was followed up by pounding on the door. I ground out my cigarette and went into the front room and looked out the peephole in the door. Sure enough, it was Ben, and I could make out someone with him. The pounding continued. Open up, Jacobs. I can hear you in there. Open up so I can kick your back. You're violating a restraining order. I'm calling the cops right now, Ben, I said as I dialed 911 on my phone. You wouldn't dare. Open up now, goddammit. Take your medicine like a man, you little wimp. When the 911 operator came on, I told them what was happening at my door. We've gotten a couple of calls for that area and have already dispatched a couple of cruisers to your location, the operator said. In the meantime, do not open the door until officers arrive. Thank you, I said before ending the call. The pounding continued, and I began to wonder if he was going to break the door down. I clutched the bat tighter and waited. God damn it, open up before I break this door down, he yelled as he pounded on the door. I heard a commotion and looked through the peephole. I saw two very large police officers putting cuffs on Ben and the other man with him. One of the officers knocked on my door. Police, the officer said. I opened the door to see the two men in cuffs. Ben looked at me as the officer led him back to his cruiser. I'm not finished with you, wimp. I'm going to come back and kick your back. I looked back at the officer. Do you know this man? He asked. I nodded my head and showed him the copy of my TRO. He read it over and spoke on his radio before addressing me again. We'll be taking them downtown. They'll be spending the night with us. Can you tell me what this is all about? He took copious notes as I told him my story. Thank you for your cooperation, he said when I finished. I don't think he'll be giving you any more trouble for a little while. I closed the door and locked it before heading back out to my balcony with a fresh beer. The next day, the news of Ben's arrest hit the papers. "Hedge fund CEO arrested," the headline read. The short story below didn't go into a lot of detail, but something told me this was just the beginning of his downfall. Over the course of the next few days, more articles came out, saying that a number of S&G's clients were leaving the company. It seems their clients felt they couldn't trust a company that ruined their employees' marriages. Naturally, this had an impact on the company's bottom line. Good, I thought. I went back to work the following Monday. It was difficult, but I managed to get some work done. I never heard from anyone for about 3 weeks. Then I got a call from Jenny. "Good morning, Carl. How are you holding up?" "About as well as can be expected. Any word from Simone?" "Yes, she's gotten an attorney and they've petitioned the court for marriage counseling. The judge agreed and has ordered 6 sessions beginning this week." "They can do that?" I asked. "Yes, and it would be to your benefit to show up. If you don't, the judge can hold you in contempt of court and even put you in jail." "There's no way I'm reconciling with that cheating woman," I told her. "I understand, but you need to show up anyway. If the counselor sees there's no hope for reconciliation, she'll let the judge know." "Okay, was there anything else?" I asked. "Yes. Her attorney tells me that Simone is pregnant. If that's the case, the court won't do anything more until paternity has been established." "So I have to wait another 8 or 9 months?" I asked. "As of right now, yes. If it's your child, you'll be ordered to pay child support. On a positive note, however, the judge has agreed to a legal separation, at least until she gives birth." "Wonderful," I said. Jenny gave me the address for the counselor and wished me luck. I wrote down the information and put it on my calendar. I decided that I would make it clear in no uncertain terms there was no way I would ever reconcile with the cheating woman. When I got to the counselor's office, I was ushered right in. A somewhat older woman looked at me over her glasses. Simone sat across from her in a love seat, looking somewhat forlorn. I had a very bad feeling about this. The counselor introduced herself as Dr. Abigail Farnsworth and indicated I should sit next to the cheating woman on the love seat. I chose instead to sit in a smaller wooden chair placed at a 45-degree angle to the love seat. "Good to see you could make it, Mr. Jacobs," she said. "I understand I have no choice," I said, crossing my arms in front of my chest. "True. Still, I'm glad to see you here." She turned to Simone. "Tell me, Mrs. Jacobs, what do you hope to get from these sessions?" "I want to get back together with my husband. We're going to have a baby, and I want to be a family again." I snorted in derision as she said that. Abigail looked at me. "And what do you hope to get out of these sessions, Mr. Jacobs?" she asked. "What I want is for you to realize there's no way I'm reconciling with that," I said, nodding my head in Simone's direction. I saw her recoil when I did that. Abigail nodded her head. "Not even for the sake of the child?" she asked me. "I honestly don't think it's my child. If by some miracle it is, I'll pay child support, and I'll do everything I can to be a father to it. But there's no way I'm reconciling with her. Period. End of sentence." "Not even for the sake of the child?" she asked. I pulled out my phone and brought up the videos that were sent to me. I showed them to Abigail. She was clearly disgusted with what she saw. When they finished, I put my phone back in my pocket. "I see you're married, doctor. Tell me, if that was your husband in those videos instead of her, would you want to reconcile? And what if you learned he had been doing that to you for more than a year and actually did it in front of you? Would you reconcile then?" "This isn't about me," she said. "This is about the two of you. And now you have a little one to think about." "Wrong, doctor. She has a little one to think about. I don't believe her child is mine. In fact, I'd be willing to bet on it. I would like a few answers from her, though." Abigail thought for a moment, then nodded her head and looked at Simone. "I think he's entitled to some answers, don't you?" she asked Simone. She looked down, sheepish, her face burning with embarrassment. She finally looked up at me before answering. "I guess so," she said. Abigail looked at me before speaking. "The floor is yours," she told me. I nodded my head in thanks and turned back to Simone. "The night of the party, you knew what was going to happen, didn't you?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "And that's the real reason you didn't want me to go with you, isn't it?" I asked. "Yes, it is. I tried to warn you that you wouldn't have any fun." And you were right. It was the absolute worst night of my life. When you kissed me at the party, you deliberately made sure you had those two men's essence in your mouth when you did, didn't you? Her face burned red for a bit. "Yes, I did," she said. "Why? Did I do something to deserve that kind of humiliation?" I asked. "You did nothing. We just thought it would be wicked and exciting. So all of you planned to humiliate me, didn't you? And you intended to humiliate me even further at Ben's place, didn't you?" "Yes and yes," she said sheepishly. "How long have you been screwing those guys?" I asked. "Pretty much from the time I joined S&G. "Again, why?" I asked. She shrugged her shoulders. "Because I liked it. It was fun. It was naughty and exciting. They made me feel sexy." "How many times did you give me sloppy seconds or kiss me with their essence still in your mouth?" I asked. "I don't know. A few." I felt like throwing up after hearing that, but managed to keep myself under control. "How many men did you have intimacy with since you started there? Not counting me," I said. "I don't know. Maybe 4 or 5 dozen." 4 or 5 dozen? You've been with 48 to 60 other men over the last year? My God, woman, are you out of your mind? Haven't you heard of STDs? What, were you trying to kill me off with something? Do you even know who the father of this child is?" "Not 100%, she replied. "But you expect me to raise it and pay for it, don't you? You're a real piece of work, you know that?" "But I love you," she said quietly. "Well, I don't love you," I said, my anger building. "Not anymore. In fact, I hate your guts right now, and I hope you rot and die of AIDS." Both of them looked at me, shocked. Simone looked as if she was about to start crying, but I didn't care. In fact, I wanted to hurt her even more with my words and started to say something else, but Abigail stopped me. "That's enough, Mr. Jacobs. You've made your point. I see you're determined to throw away 5 good years of marriage." "I didn't throw anything away. She did, the first time she spread her legs for another man. And it wasn't 5 good years. 4, maybe. The last year, she wasn't really my wife. She was just a dump for everything she could get her hands on. You heard her. She screwed 48 to 60 men over the last year. She doesn't even know who the father of her child is. No, I will never, ever reconcile with that." "All right. I think we've heard enough for today. I want to have a session with each of you on an individual basis. Then we'll go from there." We scheduled our appointment for the next week and left. I heard Simone call out to me when we got to the parking lot, but I ignored her and went to my car. As I pulled out, I saw her slumped over her steering wheel, sobbing. Good, I thought. Let her feel some pain for once. That night, I got a call from a very angry Linda. "I hope you are happy," she yelled. "What do you mean?" I asked in response. "Simone is in the hospital. She had a miscarriage. She told me what you said and the way you treated her. So what do you want? Sympathy?" "I simply told the truth, which is a lot more than she did this last year." "Didn't you hear what I said? Your wife is in the hospital. Don't you care about that?" "Frankly, no, I don't," I told her. "My God, you really are a bastard." "Well, you guys only have yourselves to thank for that," I replied. "The very least you can do is go down and give them your insurance information. Legally, she's still your wife, and you'll end up getting the bills anyway." I calmed down for a moment and remembered what Jenny told me. "All right. What room is she in?" Linda gave me the information, and I went to the hospital. When I got there, I made my way to her ward and conferred with the nurse. I gave them my insurance information and briefly spoke to the doctor. "Any idea what caused this?" I asked the doctor. He shook his head. "It's hard to say. There's a number of things that can happen in a pregnancy," he replied. How far along was she? I asked. I'd say maybe 9 or 10 weeks along, he said. That meant it was possible the child could have been mine. I would never know, however. It didn't matter, though. As far as I was concerned, her miscarriage only meant the divorce could proceed. How is she doing? I asked. She'll be okay. I want to keep an eye on her for a little bit, but she'll be able to go home in a couple of hours or so. Thanks, I said, before going into her room. She looked like hell, lying there in the bed. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Linda stood at the end of her bed. Are you happy now? She spat at me. Shut the hell up, I growled. Linda shrank back from me before leaving the room. I looked at Simone. I guess we're really through, aren't we? She asked. I nodded my head. Yeah, we are, I replied. Do you really hate me as much as you said earlier today? She asked. Right this second, no. But there's no way I'm taking you back. You've proven that I could never trust you out of my sight. Every time you went to the store, I'd sit at home wondering if you were pleasuring the clerks at the checkout stand. Besides, I simply can't get past your blatant disrespect. I don't get it. I treated you like a queen all those years. Did I do something to make you turn your back on me all of a sudden? No. You were the best husband and lover a girl could want. Obviously not. Or you would have told those clowns to bug off, I asked. It wasn't you, it was me. They brought out the cheating woman in me and told me that every guy wants to see his wife get taken by other men. I guess I just bought into their nonsense. I saw the other girls doing it and thought, why should I miss out on all the fun? And that's all it was. Just fun. Yeah, it's all fun and games until the spouse finds out. I waited a few moments before continuing. Look, the divorce is going to happen, no matter what you do. All you're doing is wasting your time and money. End this charade and move on, okay? We're done. I'm never taking you back. All right, she said quietly, tears falling down her face. I'll tell my lawyer tomorrow. And don't ask if we can be friends. I don't see that happening. The tears kept falling down her face. I'm really sorry, she said quietly. I looked at her for a few moments. Yeah, I said as I began to leave her room. Goodbye, Simone. I could hear her cry as I walked away. Tough stuff, I thought. Good riddance. A few days later, I got a call from Jenny. True to her word, Simone dropped all of her objections to the divorce. Abigail wrote a report that said reconciliation was impossible. She included a suggestion that I go through anger management, however. The judge agreed and made the same recommendation, although she fell short of making it an order. Jenny managed to get settlements from S&G funds as well as Ben and Dale about a month later. She handed me the largest check I had ever seen in my life. That's minus my take, of course, she said. Of course, I responded. I deposited the check and went on with my life, such as it was. S&G, or Sodom and Gomorrah, as I tended to think of it, closed its doors about 6 months later. It seems that its customers felt they couldn't trust the company with their money. Wonder why? I wryly asked myself. I never heard from Ben and Dale after that day at the apartment. They both spent 30 days in the county jail for their stunt and apparently didn't want to go back. Their reputations in the community were destroyed, and they left for greener pastures on the West Coast. Simone and Linda continued living in the same apartment and ended up working in a strip mall retail store, one of those places that specialized in women's clothing and cosmetics. I saw them around from time to time, but never acknowledged their presence. I stayed single and dated periodically over the next couple of years. I finally met Claire Hansen, a recent divorcee, and we dated for a few months, each of us taking it slow and easy. Like me, she had been burned by a cheating spouse and was still hurting from that. I understood her pain and did all I could to support her. The first few weeks, all we did was talk or go out for dinner and a movie. She was a bit more fragile than I was at the time. We spent a lot of time holding hands and walking through the park. I was quite attracted to her and decided to let her make the first move. One night, after a delicious lasagna at her condo, She looked at me as if studying a specimen under a microscope. "Do you find me attractive?" she asked. I smiled and looked her in the face. "I find you very attractive, in more ways than one. Why?" "I was just wondering," she said. "You've never made a move on me. I was beginning to think that maybe you don't like girls." "Oh, I like girls just fine. It's just once burned, twice shy, I guess." "I can understand that, but we're not all like your ex-wife." "True, and we're not all like your ex-husband. I happen to believe in the sanctity of marriage." She smiled. "I know you do. I hope you realize I feel the same way." "I do," I said. "So, what are you going to do with this little bit of information? Do you think you could manage to do more than give me a kiss on the cheek?" "Where would you like me to kiss you?" I asked, teasing her. She slowly lifted her dress over her waist. She gave me a sultry smile. "Well?" she asked as she spread her legs for me. I smiled and got down between her legs. Oh yeah, things were definitely looking good. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Jane walked into the house Sunday night after her weekend away. "Honey, I'm home," she called out. There was no reply. She checked the bedroom and bathroom, backyard and study. Nothing. Only the lounge room light was on. The rest of the house was in darkness. Going back out to the garage, she confirmed that Dave's car was still there. Strange, she thought. Shrugging, she went to fix herself a snack. When there was still no sign of Dave, by 10 p.m., she tried his cell. No answer. Just like Saturday night and this morning, she thought. At midnight, she rang the police. They told her that they could do nothing until a person had been missing for one complete night. Despite her exhaustion, she found sleep difficult. This was all very un-Dave-like behavior. She decided not to go to work the next day, but killed time until 8 a.m. and rang the police again. The duty operator put her through. She told the story that she'd come home last night, but had been unable to contact her husband since Friday. They promised to send someone around within 2 hours. Jane rang Dave's cell several times while she waited. Just before 10, the doorbell rang and Jane ushered in 2 uniformed officers. She related all she thought was relevant. The first officer spoke authoritatively. "Madam, there are several common signs we look for in missing persons cases that give us an idea whether the person might have chosen to disappear of their own volition or whether foul play is a possibility." They then asked where Dave kept his car, wallet, phone, keys, and passport. Jane pointed out Dave's keys hanging from their hook and took them to the garage to show them his car. They gave it a quick inspection but found nothing of interest. Next, Jane opened the safe to show them Dave's passport, then opened his bedside cabinet. At this point, she started to get really worried. There was her husband's wallet. Where could he go where he wouldn't need that? The only thing missing was his phone. Before she could worry further, one of the policemen started asking quick-fire questions. The other stood well away, just watching. The questioning officer leaned forward. "Can you tell us about your husband, Mrs. Brown? Where does he work?" Jane shifted in her chair. "We have our own business. Havelock Industries. Do you know it?" The policeman nodded. She continued. "Dave is the CEO, and I help out in the office, general admin duties, help with the books and stuff like that." The officer raised his eyebrows. "Wow, you must be very well off." "Well, yes," Jane replied. "We can afford all the best things in life, yes." The officer made a note. "And you say that this is completely abnormal behavior for your husband? Has he ever disappeared before?" "No, never," Jane said firmly. "My Dave is a creature of habit. You could set your watch just by looking at his routine most days." The officer's tone became more probing. "How would you describe your marriage, Mrs. Brown?" Jane's voice became defensive. What are you trying to imply? What I mean is, the officer clarified, was your husband happy? Could he have run away with his secretary or something like that? Jane gave a short laugh. Well, for a start, I'm his secretary. Secondly, Dave would never do anything remotely like that. I'm his life. He is completely devoted to me. The officer nodded slowly. Okay, Mrs. Brown. Now, can I ask for your whereabouts last weekend? Jane hesitated slightly. I went to visit my sister in Colville. I left Friday night and got home Sunday just after 7 p.m. You drove? The officer asked. Yes, Jane replied. It's only a 3-hour drive. The officer closed his notebook. Okay, Mrs. Brown. That's all I can think to ask at the moment. Can you give us your husband's cell number, all his bank account numbers, personal and business, plus any credit card numbers he uses? Also a list of his friends, his and your family members with their contact details, please? Jane looked puzzled. Why do you need all the bank account and credit card numbers? The officer explained. Well, we know he left his wallet behind, so if he is out there, he needs money to live. Jane pressed further. You said there were signs that indicated whether he had left of his own accord or whether something bad may have happened. What does it look like? The officer's expression grew serious. Sorry, Mrs. Brown, but apart from the missing phone, nothing else looks particularly good. It took Jane about 15 minutes to get all their requested information. Then she showed them to the door. We'll keep you posted, the officer said. Of course, if he shows up, you will let us know, won't you? Of course, Jane replied. The two policemen left. Once they were in their car, the senior one turned to his partner. The senior officer shook his head. Well, that was suspicious. His partner looked confused. What do you mean? Didn't you notice how defensive she got when you asked about the state of their marriage? Then she stuttered when you asked where she'd been for the weekend. I tell you, John, I think we should fast-track this one. Something is wrong here. Is her sister's phone number on that list she gave us? I think that would be a very good place to start. 2 days later, there was still no sign of Dave. Jane was getting frantic with worry. She rang the police at least twice a day, but there was never any news. Wednesday morning, the same two policemen from Monday showed up at the office and asked to speak to her. She took them into Dave's office for some privacy. This time, it was the senior officer who did all the talking. The senior officer fixed her with a steady gaze. Mrs. Brown, on Monday you told us that you had spent all weekend with your sister in Colville, right? Jane stammered, yes. His voice hardened. Care to tell us why you were lying, Mrs. Brown? This floored Jane. It had been pure reflex that she'd stuck to the sister story last time. She wasn't someone comfortable with lying. Well, not till a year ago, that was. Now, it was practically second nature. Never wanted Dave to find out, she whispered. The officer pressed on. Find out what, Mrs. Brown? That I wasn't at my sister's, Jane admitted. Where were you, Mrs. Brown? He demanded. At the Hilton, across town, she said quietly. Were you alone? The officer continued. No, Jane barely whispered. Who were you with? He asked firmly. I don't want to say, Jane said, looking at the floor. The officer leaned back in his chair. Well, it's your choice, Mrs. Brown. Either you tell us now or we arrest you, take you down to the station, and you tell us there. Jane looked up in shock. What? Arrest me? Why? The officer explained coldly. Well, look at it from our point of view, Mrs. Brown. Your husband disappears, and all the signs point to foul play. There's also some other things which we won't go into now, but believe me when I say we have ample reason to detain you, so your choice. Who were you with at the Hilton all weekend? Jane's voice was barely audible. A man. The policeman asking the questions grinned at his partner in triumph. Jane missed the interchange. She was too busy looking at the floor, face flushed. Who, Mrs. Brown? The officer pressed. Dennis Smith, she said reluctantly. Your friend, Mrs. Brown? He asked with emphasis. Yes, Jane confirmed. The officer continued his questioning. And, did you leave the hotel any time between Friday and Sunday nights? No, Jane replied. The only time I left the room, even, was to go to the restaurant to eat. Can you say the same for Mr. Smith? The officer asked pointedly. Jane shook her head. No, he left for about 2 hours Saturday afternoon, said he had some personal business to attend to. Where can we find this Dennis Smith? The officer demanded. Jane hesitated before answering. This was spiraling out of control. Across the hall, she said finally. He is my husband's deputy. A look of distaste crossed the policeman's face. Is it possible, Mrs. Brown, that your husband found out about your affair and abandoned you? Jane's response was immediate and loud. No. We were very discreet. My husband could never know. The officer stood up. Can you ask Mr. Smith to come in here, please, madam, then leave us alone? Without a word, Jane stood up and walked into Dennis's office. Dennis, she said urgently, the police are here. They know about us. They want to talk to you. Dennis went pale. Oh no. Dennis's face paled. Then slowly he stood and walked into Dave's office with the demeanor of a man walking to the gallows. Jane sat in reception for the next 45 minutes, her mind in a turmoil of dread. For the first time, she really thought about her affair with Dennis. Until now, she had partitioned it into the emotional too hard basket. Boredom had been the instigator. Her relationship with the same man for so many years had just become routine. Dave had stopped asking her for anything new and exciting years ago, so it had just become unexciting. When Dennis had made his wishes known for a special relationship, Jane had hardly hesitated. It added the excitement she was missing. Generally, there was very little guilt on her part, except that one time. It had been about 4 months into her infidelity when Dennis had suggested yet another thing that she'd never tried before. She'd experienced a momentary flashback to her husband suggesting precisely the same thing many years before, in almost exactly the same words. Of course she had refused him. It was way too inappropriate for her tastes. The vague thought had entered her mind that maybe she was mostly to blame for the routine nature of her relationship with Dave. The thought was brushed aside by the excitement of the new experience and afterwards was buried deep. Just one more thing to enhance her secret experience by hiding. Her secret weekend hadn't ended well. Friday night, Dennis had suggested they each file for divorce from their spouses and marry. Jane had immediately shot that down. She had no intention of leaving Dave. Dennis had pressed again on Saturday until things became quite heated. Words were said in the heat of the moment that made Jane suspect that Dennis was keen to get her half of the company. Instinctively, Jane knew not to mention the real reason Dennis had disappeared for 2 hours Saturday night to the police. He had stormed out. Yes, he had come back, and yes, they had reconciled, but Jane knew the affair was doomed and had begun the process of emotionally divorcing her companion. She knew it had to be done carefully to prevent anything changing suddenly which might alert her husband. After the police left, she and Dennis talked until the end of the day, discussing all the possible implications. With heavy hearts, they went their separate ways at 6 p.m. Jane to her suddenly lonely house, Dennis to his wife. Sleep eluded them both. Jane was woken by heavy knocking on the front door at 7 a.m. the next day. She opened the door to be greeted by a man in a suit, holding a badge in front of her face. Behind him stood 2 uniformed policemen and 2 men in disposable coveralls. The detective spoke with authority. Mrs. Brown, I'm Detective Danny Bourgeois. We have a warrant to search these premises. We also have a warrant to search your business premises. We would appreciate you giving us your computer login information and your husband's if you have it. Jane asked nervously. Why, am I a suspect? Detective Bourgeois replied reassuringly. No, we're just looking for clues where your husband might be, Mrs. Brown. In a daze, Jane complied with their requests, writing the requested passwords on a slip of paper. On further request, she handed over the keys to the office. While the small army invading her house were busy, she rang Dennis's cell. There was no answer, so she rang the landline. Dennis's wife, Andrea, answered. Despite being only 5 foot 2 inches tall, Andrea could have passed for a model. She had short blonde hair, worn in a boyish cut, under which was a round face. Alabaster skin surrounded light sky-blue eyes and puffy lips. Her 38D chest and flawless skin had always made Jane envious, especially so as the package was sealed with a genuinely honest and fiercely loyal personality. She was less likely to cheat on her husband than a person living next door to temptation was to move house. Not for the first time, Jane wondered why the heck Dennis would choose her over his wife. Andrea's voice was strained when she answered. "Jane, do you know why we have 6 policemen tramping all over my carpets?" Jane tried to sound calm. "No, Andrea. I've got the same over here. It must be something to do with Dave's disappearance." Zeph nodded. Curious. Andrea sounded shocked. "What? Dave has disappeared. Dennis didn't say anything. What does that have to do with us?" "I don't know, Andrea," Jane replied. "Can I speak to Dennis?" Andrea's voice was tense. "He's tied up with the police right now. Look, Jane, what's going on?" Jane said quickly, "I have no idea, Andrea. Sorry, I've got to go. Bye." As she returned the phone to its charging cradle in the kitchen, Jane saw one of the technicians kneeling on the floor with a strange-looking torch. She left the house. In the garage, the other technician was inside Dave's car. She made to get in her car, but the technician stopped her. "We haven't done that one yet, madam," the technician said firmly. With no escape, Jane sat in her den and listened to some relaxing music. The boys in blue left about 2 p.m. with no words of comfort and her car. Jane drove to the office in Dave's car. No one said she couldn't. The police had left a bit of a mess in reception, plus Dave and Dennis's offices. Dave was already there, and they exchanged words of comfort, their recent animosity forgotten in their shared fear. Jane pushed him away when he tried for a hug, reminding him that they could never show anything in public. They managed to keep their emotional and physical separation up until the weekend. Then, desperate, frightened, and alone, Jane rang Dennis and they met at their usual hotel for a brief meeting. She shut him down angrily when he tried to be too familiar, but allowed a companionable embrace. The whole meeting turned out to be a disaster for Jane. Obviously racked with guilt and fear, Dennis actually cried. This opened Jane's eyes. She started to see the veil that had clouded her consciousness begin to lift. Had she really risked her happy marriage, her sweet, loving husband for this weak person? An hour later, the decision was clear. No way. That was when the guilt and remorse really set in. She cried herself to sleep, Saturday and Sunday nights, and hardly slept a wink. 2 things drove her insomnia. The first was her firm belief that her husband had discovered her betrayal and harmed himself. The second was guilt. Oh yes, she'd had it all along, but she'd done a brilliant job of burying it deep. Now, it emerged with a vengeance. Consequently, when Detective Bourgeois woke her up on Monday morning, she was almost incapable of rational thought. Detective Bourgeois spoke gently but firmly. "Mrs. Brown, would you agree to accompany me to the police station?" Jane nodded wearily. "Yes, of course." The detective continued. "I have to tell you, Mrs. Brown, that you are entitled to legal representation." Jane had given some thought to this. In the back of her mind, she'd known the police hadn't finished with her. "No, that's fine, Detective," Jane replied. "Do I come in your car, or can I use mine?" Detective Bourgeois gestured toward his vehicle. "Mine will be fine, madam." The short drive to the station was a silent one. All the while, Jane wondered if it was bad news. Had they found Dave? As they pulled into the station, she saw Dennis being led into the building. Danny showed her into an interview room where they were joined by a female detective who wasn't introduced. Once they were settled, the questions came. Detective Bourgeois spoke formally. I just want you to be aware that this conversation is being recorded. Can you state, for the record, that you agree with that? Yes, I agree with that, Jane replied. Can you also confirm that you have not requested legal representation? The detective asked. Yes, that is correct, Jane confirmed. The detective leaned forward. For the record, Mrs. Brown, we have been monitoring your husband's bank and credit card accounts for the last week, and there has been absolutely no activity since the Saturday morning you were away. Jane asked anxiously, What about his cell phone activity? Detective Bourgeois replied. I'll get to that. He continued methodically. Mrs. Brown, a week ago, 2 of my colleagues attended your house when you reported your husband, David Brown, missing. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct, Jane confirmed. During said visit, the detective continued, they asked you to account for your whereabouts the previous Saturday and Sunday. You stated that you had been visiting your sister. Subsequent investigations proved that was untrue, and you later admitted to spending the weekend in a hotel with Mr. Dennis Smith. Can you tell me why you lied, Mrs. Brown? With her blatant untruths thrown in her face like that, Jane felt very embarrassed again. Thus it was again, after a pause, that she replied, I didn't want my affair to become public knowledge, she said quietly. Danny turned to the lady sitting away from the table. They exchanged nods. Having successfully disconcerted her, Danny continued questioning Jane. Mrs. Brown, Detective Bourgeois asked, do you know the passwords for all your husband's business accounts? Jane replied, Of course, it is my business as well. Did Mr. Dennis Smith also have access to the company accounts? The detective pressed. Yes, of course, Jane said. He is the chief financial officer. Detective Bourgeois delivered his bombshell. Okay, are you aware that on the Friday before your trip, the sum of $8,300,000 was transferred to the personal account of Mr. Dennis Smith, then immediately transferred to an untraceable account in the Cayman Islands? That sum represented almost all of your company's working capital. Can you account for your whereabouts at 1:17 p.m. on that Friday, Mrs. Brown? Jane had a sudden sinking feeling. What time had she disappeared with Dennis into one of the stockrooms out the back that day? This was just getting worse and worse. She became aware that both detectives were still waiting for her to answer. No, I can't, Jane said weakly. I would have been at work, though. If I can get my diary, I should be able to confirm that. Detective Bourgeois brushed this aside. Maybe later, Mrs. Brown. I have to say we suspect that your husband is dead. Jane cried out, No, that can't be. The detective pressed on relentlessly. Look at the evidence, Mrs. Brown. Absolutely no action on any of your husband's accounts. No sightings. We know he hasn't left the country, as his passport is still here. Jane tried to interrupt with the information that as Dave had dual citizenship, he had 2 passports. But Danny knew his stuff and refused to let her regain her composure. He interrupted again. You asked about your husband's cell phone before Mrs. Brown, the detective continued. I have to tell you that with the cooperation of your husband's service provider, it was found in a dumpster 1 block away from your business premises on Tuesday of last week. With it was found a quantity of plastic sheeting. Both the phone and the sheeting showed evidence of blood that has been identified as the same type as your husband's. Do you have any comment, Mrs. Brown? Jane went as white as a sheet. If something had happened to Dave, she would be devastated. The detectives watched the look of horror invade her face and completely misinterpreted it. No, Jane whispered. Danny Bourgeois was one of a new breed of detectives, a product of a deliberate recruiting policy. Ruggedly handsome, with a natural ability to put people at their ease. Unassumingly intelligent, but with a slightly troubled past. How can I put this? Let's just say that before his recruitment, he was already known to the police. The combination of intelligence, disarming demeanor, and insight into the criminal mind had ensured his quick rise through the ranks. With his instinctive approach, he knew the secret was to keep suspects off balance. He plunged on. Detective Bourgeois continued his assault. Then maybe you can explain where the trace of a large blood stain came from, found on your kitchen floor and also confirmed as your husband's blood type? At this point, all Jane was capable of was looking at the floor and shaking her head. Mixing it up a bit to cause further confusion, Danny pressed on. For the record, Jane Brown is shaking her head, the detective stated. Mrs. Brown, would you like to comment on the prenuptial agreement found in your safe, which clearly states that all assets from the marriage between yourself and David Brown go to the offended party in the case of proven infidelity? The detective noted for the recording. For the record, again, suspect is shaking her head. He continued relentlessly. Are you aware, Mrs. Brown, that during a search of the premises of Mr. Dennis Smith, a fishing knife was found? Attempts had been made to clean it, but it showed traces of human blood, again, with a type shared by your husband. Detective Bourgeois stated again. For the record, again, the suspect is shaking her head. The final blow came next. Lastly, Mrs. Brown, can you account for a quantity of blood of your husband's type found in the trunk of your car? A car that, by your statement, was parked at the Hilton Hotel from the Friday night to the Sunday night. That blood was tested as being spilled somewhere on the Saturday evening, plus or minus 12 hours. The full gravity of her situation finally began to dawn on her, as well as a deadly certainty. It was fully 5 minutes before she responded. The two detectives seemed happy to let her take her time. Jane finally spoke. I think I need a lawyer. Detective Bourgeois stood up. Absolutely. Jane Brown, I am arresting you for the murder of David Brown. You do not have to say anything, but anything. At that point, Jane fainted. Jane was remanded overnight until 11 a.m. the next day, when a judge set her bail at $250,000 0 cents and ordered her to surrender her passport. She was able to access a loan account to transfer the money to a business account. She caught a cab home. That night, the absolute shell of a woman that had been on top of the world a mere 8 days before contemplated the future, a woman that once had everything. She had accepted the fact that her husband was dead. What she couldn't face was the realization that she'd caused it. The guilt and remorse she felt almost stopped her heart. She tried to imagine Dave's face in happier times, but images of him gasping his last breath on her kitchen floor prevented that. The mental image of his plastic-wrapped face staring at her as the trunk closed ate into a soul no longer armored by denial. She sat in the kitchen in a daze. The phone rang and the beaten shell automatically answered it. It was Dennis. Dennis's voice was desperate. Jane, you have to help me. I rang Andrea and she said she's left me and cleared out our bank accounts. You have to bail me out, please. Jane replied numbly, Okay, Dennis. She went back online and transferred another $250,000 from the loan account. Using her newfound knowledge, she was able to pay the second bond. The next day, shortly before lunch, Dennis rang again. Dennis sounded needy. Thanks, friend. Can I come and see you? I really need a hug right now. Jane answered flatly. Okay, Dennis. See you soon. As soon as she heard the cab pull up outside, she stood up and went to the door. The shell of Jane Brown opened the door. Whatever tiny part of her sanity that remained snapped when she saw a monster standing on her porch. Jane screamed, You lying, murdering wretch! You killed my Dave! Raising her husband's pistol, she pulled the trigger. She didn't see the look of shock on its face as the monster was blown backwards, a .45-inch hole in the center of its chest. It went down so fast that the second bullet went over its head. The last 6 hit, though, smacking into the twitching body lying on the path. With the gun still clutched in a suddenly limp fist, something slumped to the top step with its back against the doorframe as the spirit of Jane Brown fled. Ruth arrived at her sister's house mentally prepared for the grim task of putting Jane's affairs in order. Noticing there was mail in the box, she retrieved it. Mostly bills, but one postcard. With the common logic of, If people wanted to keep the message on postcards private, they would use an envelope. She picked it up. On the front was a photograph of a beautiful beach on Grand Cayman. On the back, simply the words, "Wish you and Dennis were here. Love, DNA." What was that all about? She kept going into the house. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.